remember any conversations where this happened? You're in the car, your spouse is talking to you, maybe reminding you to go do an errand or this or that. And then at the end of the day, when you both come home from work, and any one of the spouses might ask, well, did you do that? And you respond, do what? Are you telling me that you do not listen to every word your spouse says? Are you telling me that sometimes you're thinking of something totally different when they're trying to tell you what to do? You know, that was not the vow you took on your wedding day. I promise to listen to everything you say, take it seriously, and do whatever you command. Oh my gosh, well, the good old days were when we had to obey, but that's another story. Jesus' disciples weren't any different. Jesus is teaching them along the way. First Christians were called followers of the way. The movement was called the way. The way of the cross, the way of Jesus, the way of servanthood, the way of the last shall be first. However that was, the Christians were living in such a manner that the world saw them as followers of the way. But you got to wonder, maybe why were the disciples not listening to what Jesus said? Sometimes we don't listen to our spouses because we don't want to hear what they have to say. Sometimes you don't listen to your priest because you don't want to hear what we have to say. Sometimes you're asleep in church. Or you're daydreaming about that last conversation you had with your spouse. Where was I? Yeah, you know, Steve, it's the same to me. I don't know. I don't have a clue. They're not listening to Jesus. And instead, Jesus knows they're not listening. He's talking about going to the cross, and they're talking about who's the greatest. He's talking about going to the cross, and James and John, in one, they go say to Jesus, and another, they send their mother because they're chicken. Jesus, remember my two sons. Let them serve on your left and on your right when you come into your kingdom. And we know that Jesus' kingdom was not the kind that we were thinking of. And of course, Jesus says, that's not for me. And then remember who served on the left and right of Jesus when he came into this kingdom. The criminal on the left and the criminal on the right. And you can hear echoes of that conversation with Zebedee's mother. The Zebedee boy's mother. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That is someone who paid attention. That is someone who knew what was happening. That is someone, in my opinion, that expressed the most faith of anyone in the story of the Bible. To be hanging and dying on the cross next to a dying Savior. And having faith in a dying Savior. Amazing. But instead, the disciples were arguing about who is the greatest. I have to confess. Joyce, maybe you need to turn the camera off. I think Episcopalians are the greatest. I think we got it better than the Roman Catholics, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, turn it off, Joyce, the Baptists, the Pentecostals, the United Church of Christ, the Disciples of Christ, whoever is a member of Christ. But today, at 5 o'clock, if you come, you will hear a Baptist say why the Baptist is best. You will hear a Presbyterian say why the Presbyterian is best. And my golf buddy in Savannah is Presbyterian ministry, and he is always saying they're the best. We will have a Methodist minister and a Lutheran minister, all saying why they're the best. Have things changed any? No. Since Jesus' time, we're still arguing about who's the best. Now, if you've heard me preach before, you know that I think all the denominations have gifts, unique gifts to offer, and unique challenges, as do we. I was listening to Michael Curry, I was re-listening to Michael Curry's, you should watch this on YouTube. It's the Revival of General Convention, and Michael Curry's preaching, but he has this translator following him around. It is so powerful. But he mentions Nicodemus coming to Jesus, and he says, you know, Nicodemus wasn't Episcopalian. Only Episcopalians paid to come at night to talk to Jesus. And he's reflecting on how we're a little bit private with our faith. So if you all hear me make fun of the Episcopal Church, I love it. I think it's the best. I want to be the greatest. That's why I'm here. That Jesus calls us to want to be the greatest, right? Let's be the greatest Episcopalians we can be. Let's be the greatest followers of the way we can be. But the problem with that is we've got to submit ourselves to God. Submit ourselves to Jesus. To listen for the Holy Spirit. I remember my first vestry meeting. I'm not going to go along because Peter, believe it or not, I'm going to call you back up here because the kids are coming back down to do something. So be prepared. I forgot. Where was I? Oh, my first vestry meeting as a youth leader. I go to the vestry meeting, there's a bunch of people our ages there acting like children. Wanting their way at the expense of anybody else's way. And I was just so dismayed. I went to the rector, I said, how can you serve a church like this? And he just said, the church is made up of human beings. But that vestry was no different than the disciples. So when we fight with each other, we're actually in apostolic succession. When we say we're better than the other, we're actually in apostolic succession. The good news for you all is we had a vestry meeting Monday. We had tons of stuff to do. We still got it done in an hour, even though they come around and talk to each other, fellowship and all that. But the coolest thing was, different opinions were expressed, even with some intensity. And every one of them was willing to just let it go. No one insisted on their way. I think that's a powerful statement for your vestry. And it's a powerful statement of unity. So the question we are left with is, why is it we prefer to argue than to love? Why is it that I have to prove to Maureen that I'm right in the minutest way there could be? Now finally, by the age of 60, I learned to say, yes, dear. It was transformative. Changed our relationship completely. We have to be willing to let our way go. And let Jesus have his way with us. We'll call that an amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son,